Hi, I'm McAtee, and today I'm making another video on aquaculture. If you haven't seen my first video, it's called Practical Tips for Aquaculture Operations, and it's probably better to watch that one first just because it introduces a lot of the variables I'm going to discuss in today's video. But today, the main focus is going to be on the variable of feeding. In a scientific setup, let's say you're trying to figure out how something works, how manipulating a variable is going to produce a certain result. You want to keep your other variables constant. So let's say we keep our water quality, we're not doing anything to really change our water quality, and we're not changing our stocking density. So then looking mainly at how the feed is going to affect our growth. We're going to want to have an increase in growth, and say we want to keep our survivorship constant just for the purpose of this video. Of course, you always want to increase your survivorship, but just to keep the constant for this discussion and what you need to do to at least prevent decline in survivorship. So let's say we want to increase our growth. A good theory to start off with is, okay, let's increase our feed then. And then of course feed the fish, they eat more food, they grow bigger. So then you get more growth in a shorter amount of time. You have a better product and with less investment, ideally. Of course, you're going to have to pay for feed you're putting in, but having a larger product in a shorter amount of time is going to mean you have more profits coming in, and that should more than recoup your cost on feed. So, say intuitively, yeah, we just want to increase growth, so we increase feed. Of course, it's going to work, but only up to a point. So I'm going to return to a concept from the last video of carrying capacity. Basically, the concept behind it is that you have a certain level where if you have more animals, a higher population over time, then eventually that increases and levels off where the environment won't hold anymore. We're going to cross that kind of concept over in order to explain our feeding. Because with your feeding, of course you want to increase to get an increase in growth. You should produce that result. But there's only a certain amount you can go to for a specific system at a specific time. And at that point, you should stop your increase. And ideally, say it's constant, and then you found the right amount to feed. Of course, you're going to have changing variables coming into factor all the time, and you're going to have you don't want to feed more over time than what you were initially, because you have a larger animal going to require more food for its metabolism in order to continue those gains in growth. So let's say you keep feeding, increasing your amounts, everything's good. You overshoot, okay, and everything still seems fine, you keep going, but eventually you reach a tipping point where the amount you're feeding is going to cause problems with water quality, it's going to cause a drop in your survivorship, and could actually negatively impact your growth just because problems with water quality. So basically this works is you leave feed that's uneaten within your system, it causes problems with water quality, by the decomp of the matter in the feed, and having the fish overfed is going to have negative impacts on how the fish feel as far as their stress levels and how their metabolism functions. So we want to make sure we're not overshooting our feed, because of course then we'll have a drop in survivorship, all these things you don't want to have happen, and then we'll have to basically drop our feed amounts in order just to keep the fish alive, because the water quality is so bad, and assuming we're not doing anything else to supplement our water quality, and the only way to change is to reduce the feeding amount. And then you should have a return to a more stable system where your growth should, still growth won't be negatively impacted. You might have it level off and have constant growth. Of course, different stages of the fish's life, you're going to have different amounts of growth, and you don't really see that just based on sampling your fish and looking at what their weights are over time in order to account for the change in mass and for the fish, how that's going to affect your feed. But this just gives a first relationship for feeding and growth, but how we know where we're going to start our feeding off at. Best way to probably start off with feeding is you have records of specifically where you're at now, what system you have, same species you have, same size, same water quality, and you have past records of basically all those variables are the same, so we start off with the same feed amount. And perhaps maybe they weren't feeding them enough, maybe you need to increase it and then you can increase your profits, or perhaps do it and this time put in the same feed amount, but then you have all these problems with water quality, you're going to have to decrease your feed again. So there's plenty of variables you may or not even consider, or or just the fish react differently. Fish from one time to another, even with the same species, you're going to have different genetics to each fish. So, this is all going to be very specific to your system, and it's all going to change over time, which is why you need to be watching all the variables at play. And so, say you got historical records and you just figure out the right amounts and you go from there. Let's say you don't have historical records. You have no idea where to start off my feeding at. Could do the trial and error method of just simply intuitively look at the amount of fish you have, look at all the information you do have, and just kind of take an educated guess at where to start, and then increase over time until you have a negative result, and then you might have to level off that feed amount like this nice curve, or you may see a large problem where you have to drop your feed amounts by a lot, and then proceed from there. But probably better than just starting off by trial and error immediately is if you don't have the specifics for your system, I would start off with a literature review. You're looking at textbooks and scientific papers. You're looking at your specific species, looking at the kind of system you have, the water quality you have. Look at as many different variables as you can find within the literature, and take all those factors into account to see what the recommended amounts for feeding are. Because there's a lot of studies out there as far as the common aquaculture species, and you should be able to find some kind of literature on feeding. Then as far as not even just your feed amounts, you may need to be looking into how do I need to space my feedings apart, and how many feedings a day. Of course, that's going to be restricted within the practical constraints of how many employees working how many hours, and just looking at that, there may be some literature, and you want to start off with that as far as how to space your feedings out for your specific situation. That's another thing you can kind of do some trial and error on, based on what you have available, what you can do, what's best recommended as far as figuring out your length between feedings and your number of feedings per day. And then all these variables can also change with the kind of feed you're using. The main kinds of feed are just today mostly you have the floating feed and the sinking feed. And then within that you have the pellets that are different ingredients, different macronutrients, different amino acid profile, and all those, as they change, can change different variables in your feed amounts, and how that changes everything else. And then there's also, I've seen where you add natural food source into it. Let's say if you're raising fish for future stocking into a natural system, you might want to present the natural food to them, or for them to be more prepared as predators. And so yeah, again, used to eating, like if you stock in some kind of small bait fish for the fish to start eating, then they can get accustomed to that before being released in the wild. They'll have a better understanding of how to capture their food. And in the past, there's been other things like just grinding up raw meat and vegetable sources and throwing that in, kind of. But today, it's mostly the pelleted form, because you can get a complete food source for your fish, where you don't have to go through and figure out the different ingredients for yourself. It's already formulated and pelleted. And then, like I said, you got the floating and sinking. Floating has the advantage of immediately you know how much feed your fish is finishing, whether or not it can finish the whole amount or it can't. And you have the sinking pellets, which you don't have that advantage, but perhaps you might be able to get those cheaper. You might have an advantage there. But yeah, you always want to make sure you're not overfeeding your fish, because like I said, it can cause a number of problems down the road, or anytime you see a problem, it could cause an impact on your water quality with the decomp of the pellet, and causing a drop in water quality, specifically like your dissolved oxygen and your wastes coming in the room, the amount of ammonia and stuff like that. So those are the main things I wanted to talk about for feeding today. And next video, I think we'll talk about stocking density. See you then.